Welcome back to Hope for Healing. This is the men's panel, and I am very interested in this conversation because I, as a man, have gone through a journey of self-discovery and feeling like I had to do it all by myself. And I reckon that there's a conversation in the world for being a man that really isn't all that healthy. That as men, we think we have to be strong and figure it out on our own. But as humans, we want to be connected and we want to feel like we're a part of something together. So we're now in the conversation, and I'm going to introduce these amazing gentlemen that we transform that, and men get to have the type of support and healthy expression of masculinity that would really make a difference inside of leadership, inside of partnership, and inside of relationship. So I'm going to open up the floor. I'd like to ask each of you to give me an introduction. How has it been for you being a man? What's your story and how you've evolved into your authentic expression as a man? Michael, why don't you open it up?
I appreciate the opportunity, Nathan. It's great to spend time with you guys and be in this conversation with you all. And I would say for me, one of the biggest moments of my life, most challenging moments of my life was in my 30s when I was going through a divorce, financially, crippled, and my father passed away, all within the same year. And I remember in that moment really having this honest and sobering reflection of myself of like, okay, now what? What do I do? How do I, what's the parts of me that are generating these missteps and miscommunications in relationships and financial instability. And then in that storm, losing my father, who was really my male and masculine role model growing up throughout my entire life, for better or for worse, positives and negatives. But I found myself in my mid-30s really feeling lost, and lost really as a man. And I remember my ex saying to me at one point, we were in this struggle and in this challenge of miscommunication. I said, what do you want? What do you need? And she said, I need you to man up. And I remember her saying that and me thinking, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And that really became an honest point of reflection for me, to really look within and start to really exercise, like, what is it for me personally, authentically for me, to be a man? And what would that look like to be effective in my relationships, in my finances, in my health, and in my deeper work and in my career? And that's led me on a journey through really unlocking a lot of personal potential, and now having the opportunity to support men that I coach and that are in my programs to really unlock that potential and that clarity for them as they journey even in parts of feeling lost in this journey of masculinity and manhood.
Wow. Thank you, Michael. I really got that there was a moment in time that you really actually had to transform yourself, that everything in life had kind of fallen apart and you had to step up as a man, and you had to actually even define what being a man was, because you didn't even know what that was. And look at you now. And I would assert that the moment a man discovers what it means to be a man is a moment of crisis. And that's probably not always true, but I would say that's a lot of the time, at least in the men that I've met.
Yeah, and it really came from, the honest portion for me was, I never want to do this again. I never want to put myself through this again. I never want to put someone else through this again. And it really required me to turn that mirror on myself and say, well, hold on, what's my participation in these results that I'm getting financially and in relationships and in my health? And it really required a lot of honesty and a lot of honest reflection.
Of course, yeah, honesty. We're going to dive into that, but I want to let the other guys introduce themselves. Thatcher, why don't you jump in and explain your story and how you've come into your masculine expression?
Yeah, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's really cool to see you again, Nathan, and it's cool to be on this thing with such good friends. Even I was thinking about this earlier, even being on something like this and having a conversation like this on a really beautiful Sunday morning. It's a really far cry from like where I came from and what I experienced in terms of like my own personal crises. And, Mike said that at his mid 30s, he hit this, we'll call it a bottom, I suppose. Right. And, the same thing happened to me. It happened much earlier, which I'm kind of grateful for, actually. But, it really had me take a look at my life and the choices that I was making and, what brought me there. And, I was fortunate in a way to kind of have this natural sense that like I had brought myself to this position. I kind of knew it wasn't the world and my circumstances so much as it was me and my choices. And my personal story is, I was addicted to drugs and alcohol, right? And some other unhealthy things. And it all kind of came crashing down. And again, doing something like this is a far cry from how I would have spent my Sunday mornings years ago. But I was really lucky. I was blessed. I was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to, as you said, Nathan, kind of like transform my life. And not just my life, like my world kind of transformed, right? Like that, I started to experience and navigate the world differently because my perception has started to change. And like, that's what recovery and being a recovering man has allowed me to do. And it's funny, the thing that started me on the journey in terms of like taking some personal accountability, which gave me some personal responsibility, is something that like I really find important now after being sober for 15 years, almost 16 years actually. So it's that constant kind of looking within, being a natural reflection and honest reflection of like, okay, what's my role here? Where am I an active participant? And then what can I do? How can I be more responsive? And that's something that I'm constantly looking at. And then also really concentrating on applying principles in my life, right? And being a principled man. And I think that that's something that I think is really the answer for me in a lot of ways, and staying in touch with my spirituality, right? And, it's weird. For me, it was like, Michael had his story. I had my personal crisis. What I can safely say is that there was a lot of pain and a lot of desperation involved in that. And that's what pushed me in the door to the transformation. But what kept me here and, wasn't the pain or the desperation. It was actually quite the opposite. It was connection and love and inspiration, right? That stuff pushed me in, but there was something much bigger than that kept me here, right? And I'm grateful that I found a new way of life. I'm grateful that I can sit here and have conversations like this, and I'm grateful that I can be constantly looking at, okay, what does it mean to be a man? Like, what does that look like? How can I demonstrate that outwardly in my life? So again, super grateful to be here, and appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Thatcher. Yeah, that's really powerful, and I really got that you took responsibility. And inside of taking responsibility, you discovered that you wanted a life filled with love and happiness and fulfillment. And and I hope we get to talk about responsibility, because I think there's something honorable about that as men, that we get to do that. But we'll revisit that a little bit later. I want to let Ryan introduce himself, Ryan, you're an amazing guy. I mean, I know you from gratitude training, and when you were going to be on this panel, I was so excited because you were such an influential part of me growing up in my early 20s in the gratitude training. And I just want to thank you. And I also want to invite you to, share your story and how you became the man you are and what's made a difference for you.
Thank you, Nathan. That's very nice of you to say. And I'm grateful to be here too. The question I think you asked was what it has been like for you being a man. And I knew we were going to be talking about this today, but I don't know if I've been ever asked the question in that way. And what is it like for you having, being a man? And I think, because that's, I guess, in one way all I've ever known, but there's been so many iterations of it and forays into it. And thinking I was being a man at times that maybe I really wasn't being who I wanted to be as a man. And I think I've been in that question a lot lately. I too have a story of addiction and alcoholism and recovery. And it's been some time now. And after I had been kind of on that path for maybe, I don't know, 8 or 9 years. And at that point, I had a wife, I had a stepson. I now have a young daughter, but I remember I was kind of struggling with some stuff. I was feeling really anxious and stressed, and I was working with a coach. And I said to him, I said, I feel like I've been working at this for a long time. And right now I feel so stressed and anxious. And I said to him, I can remember 5 or 6 years ago when life was just easy. And that 5 or 6 years ago time, I'd been working at a place, was going back to school. I was kind of doing something that I'd always wanted to do. I wasn't in a relationship. I did not have children. I just kind of got up. I went to work. I did my healing stuff, and life seemed really simple. And I was longing for that in this conversation I was having with this coach. And I remember he said to me, I said, I don't know why I was so much better then. And he said, Ryan, you were still living like a boy. And he didn't mean it like an insult. It was just like I didn't have a lot of the responsibilities like you just brought up that I have now, and there's a lot of things in my life to test, the principles Thatcher talked about, the man that I want to be, and it's easier for me to get bumped up against, having to take my son to school, or him not listening to me, or my daughter crying, my wife's pregnant now and dealing with that. And it's easy for me to get bumped up by that and backed up and just thinking I want it to be easy. And the man that I want to be is someone who can handle hardship and difficulty and stress with grace and ease. And sometimes I can, sometimes I can't, and we just found out that a few weeks ago that this baby we're having in December is a boy. And I had always wanted a son, and I have a son and my stepson, but he came to me when he was 6. So I haven't had the baby, and we have this daughter, and I was kind of like hoping for another girl, just, I don't know, because of the experience. But when they said we were having a boy, I kind of felt a little, if I'm honest, I felt almost like disappointed, and I didn't know why that was. And I started exploring it, and it was another question about who I am as a man, and am I going to be able to be the man I want to be and impart that on him as a father. And I was really just scared. It wasn't disappointed. And so I'm kind of up with that again right now. And I think that's also part of being a man, is being able to be, at least the one I want to be, is vulnerable and not knowing the answers, and being able to be in the question and kind of be in the dark sometimes, which is not easy. But fortunately, I have a lot of men around me that I respect and look up to and can share this stuff with. And I'm grateful to be here and be in that conversation today.
Thank you, Ryan. I really appreciate that. And also, I'm sure I speak for everyone to say congratulations on your upcoming son. You said a lot. And what was interesting that I really heard was, really to have the ability as a man to handle hard circumstances rather than having an easier existence. And it's almost like that saying, like, don't pray for things to be easier, pray for you to be stronger. And I think that's one of the elements of being a man. And part of that's a little bit of a struggle too, because I think we want to take on more, but we also hold ourselves to an unrealistic expectation. And I want to just give you a minute, and actually maybe we'll go through everyone. How much of having that expectation of ourselves is putting too much pressure that is kind of leading to, like you said, you're in recovery, as is Thatcher, how much of that is leading men to want to run and hide and feel like they can't live up to that, and so it's just easier to use some sort of substance or something? And what do you think men that are doing that are struggling with at a more core level?
I think it's kind of I think that's even not just a male question, that's kind of a human question. And I think what's happening in that is I think we're looking for some sort of relief from difficulty or stress, and we want it to be easy. I think the bane of our kind of existence as modern day humans, and I really believe this. I'm a therapist and a coach, and I see this a lot. I mean, I think the root of our troubles is often confusing discomfort with threat. That there's something we don't like, and I somehow, and I don't mean confusing it conceptually. I mean, there's like an automatic unconscious reaction to something that says I'm at threat, and I'm in some sort of instinctual response that's like I was in survival mode. And I might not be thinking my son's not listening to me or my wife's not agreeing with me and I'm going to die. But if I look at some of my reactions, or I would say overreactions, to me, it looks like a survival response. I'm fighting or fleeing or freezing in some way. And I think we look at, I think we look for relief very quickly, and we're going to look for the things that work the easiest. And things like alcohol and drugs and food and TV and sex and work and money, and the list goes on and on. They work. It does provide relief, albeit temporary and not sustainable. So I think we're looking for some, we look at alcohol, we call it spirits. We're looking for some sort of spiritual connection or solution. And I think that's what we're doing all the time. We're doing it with racing thoughts, or with, different things that we pick up or that we use to help us calm down. And I'm not saying everything we use to help us calm down is bad, but anything that we're using only from the outside and not willing to take a look on the inside and go, where am I confusing all of this stuff? It might help us for a bit, but it's not going to be sustainable. Ultimately, I need to be able to look in and go, hey, how can I relax into this discomfort? Where am I addicted to my own survival when survival isn't really called for? If that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. And I see both Michael and Thatcher were making face like they want to jump in this. I see the gears turning. So I'm going to just let Michael jump in, and really to build on that, and what men, and really just, it's a human question, what we're all dealing with, men and women, but what's there on the under the surface.
I love what, Thatcher and Ryan have contributed already. And I think, I think you Ryan hit on it, and Thatcher relatively solved it, even though we haven't even, linked this all together. But, I love what you said, Ryan, about your coach saying, because you were acting like a boy then. And I hear that. And as I was thinking back on what I was saying about my ex saying, I need you to, be a man, she was accurate, because I was being a boy in my relationship. I was being a boy in my first marriage, and I wanted things to be easier. And in that, I was really moving away from responsibility. I was moving away from discomfort. I was moving away from really deeper commitments. And I think the remedy for, as a man or as a woman, like, this is a human question, the remedy for walking into confronting and facing that discomfort is having deeper commitments. And I think that's really the bridge that moves us from, boyhood into manhood, or, youth into adulthood, is to actually have deeper commitments that I'm willing to be uncomfortable for something that's greater than me. And I think that's where the root of our responsibility comes in, is that I'm saying that something is worth my discomfort. Something is worth, me being uncomfortable for, whether that's waking up in the middle of the night and feeding a newborn, or my purposeful work, or being criticized for having an opinion and trying to move the needle forward culturally in conversations like this. I think when we're clear, or we get clear on, what is that greater underlying commitment for me, it starts to strengthen that responsibility, and then it also builds on our resiliency. And what I love, my favorite definition of resiliency is the ability to overcome adversity with your integrity intact. And I think that to me is the quintessential masculinity, is that I'm able to face discomfort, I'm able to face adversity, overcome it, but I don't lose my principles along the way, like Thatcher was pointing to, that I don't lose my integrity along the way, that I don't sell out and do the shortcut along the way, that I actually move through that discomfort with something greater within me, drawing me forward, like Thatcher was saying about inspiration and love and connection, that I'm committed to those things and I'm willing to let those pull me through a fire of discomfort and go on that journey of not knowing, of discovering, of illuminating for myself. And then in the process, what I think makes it deeper, meaningful, and more fulfilling is then the ability to get through that adversity, keep my integrity intact, and then help and support and guide, other people going through similar challenges that I faced, before. And so that's how I hear, this conversation of really that leap from boyhood into manhood, is to not run from responsibility, adversity, or discomfort, but to lean into it, embrace it, and become resilient from it, and then eventually contribute it back.
Wow. So alchemizing the challenges of life as an opportunity to become stronger, better men, whatever better means. Thatcher, you get to take this to the next level and tie it all together. I mean, you have so much to work with here.
Yeah, I mean, they really summarized everything really well. I mean, I just, as I look at this through the lens of like my own life and the things that have been most impactful for me and created transformation and healing and like just supported me, it's to Michael's point, it's some type of sacrifice was made, and I either had to give up something or I had to love something so much that I was willing to let go of some things. And if I think about like my own journey, it's like, it's kind of small and not as, significant maybe as having children, but like, a year ago, my girlfriend came up with the idea of us getting 2 puppies to take care of. And, my life was very easy before that. I did what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. And I saw that as a complete interruption to that. And again, let me just be very clear. I am not comparing having 2 newborn puppies to raising a child, another human being, but it really showed me like my narrative about commitment and my attachment to my own kind of self-designed desires and my own agenda, really. And then it kind of dawned on me that like for me to love these animals and take care of them, it's like it requires sacrifice, because it was very easy to love them when they were sleeping or they were on my lap just hanging out. It wasn't so easy at 3 a.m. when they needed to go downstairs and use the bathroom, so it really showed me this element of like sacrifice, right? And what Michael said, deeply commit. And that's the thing for me that's always changed me, is to be deeply committed to something, right? Is to commit to something and to just see it through. And I think that, again, not just men, but like in terms of like the human condition, I think humans are much more activated by a pursuit like that and having an aim like that, more so than the actual achievement, right? But it's the pursuit of it and having that aim. And, it reminds me that like real love should have a sacrificial element to it, and I don't want to say that it's not love if it doesn't have that, but I think it's an important piece. So that's what's really shown me the most, is when I've sacrificed. And I love what Michael said, and deeply committed. And what Ryan said is so true too. It's like, if I can't find a life that has some type of meaning or purpose to it, I'm going to allow myself to be distracted by desire. It's just going to happen, and it happens, and it's a practice, but I think having a meaningful life, having a purpose for myself, and then having a pursuit, right, and being deeply committed along the way, and then sacrificing, I'm a late bloomer to all this stuff, and I'm just kind of learning later on in my life. And I usually have my dukes up at first, but then once I put them down and lean into it, what's available on the other side is so much greater in my experience than, what I had before. And I had to build a capacity for this. I think Michael spoke into this, right? I had to build a capacity for it. It was there. It was available. It just wasn't accessible, right? And I love the definition of resiliency, not just getting through adversity, but doing so with my principles. Because anyone probably can just kind of barrel through adversity like a bar fight and just kind of get out, doing whatever they needed to do. But to do so with principles intact, I think, that's what, that takes a sacrifice. That takes a deep commitment, right? So great stuff. I really learned a lot on this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we're all learning. And this is why we share, so we can get to that. And, I think what I was hearing from you, Thatcher, is really just having that, and it's the common theme, is having that future that's worth living into, that we're willing to give up whatever it is that's our momentary pleasure, so that way we can have the greater aim. And I want to ask, maybe we'll go back to Ryan, and we'll go across to everyone. Like, what are the steps you take to cultivate that future for yourself? And how can you start in a very small sense, man or woman, but just as a person, to start to let go of those childlike behaviors that we oftentimes carry into adulthood, and to really step into a more mature expression of ourselves, and in our case, a more mature expression of ourselves as men?
Well, I think first, am I unmuted? Yeah.
You're good.
I think first it's important to realize it's not binary. It's not like I was acting like a child then and now I'm not. There's under stress and duress, I think we automatically return to the patterns of our history. Our pathology is really misdirected survival instincts that we've developed over time. And so it's not always bad to be childlike. We want to be able to access that curiosity and joy and, kind of freedom to feel good and be happy. It's when it kind of grabs me unconsciously, automatically, and I find myself not leaning into things, but leaning away from it or running away. And so, at least for me and my experience with working with men and people in general, that, it's a matter of finding that, recognizing when we're, not standing in, recognizing when I'm not standing in the man I want to be, and being able to recognize it sooner and have tools and practice to be able to return to it quicker. That becomes a recovery process, if you will. And it's on a daily basis. I remember I had a trainer in some, it was a training for a therapeutic modality. And I remember she said, Ryan, if you're in your functional adult, which is that kind of being a man, 60 or 70% of the time, you're doing a really good job. So I asked her, could I go 7 days on and 3 days off? And she wanted to slap me. It's more of a matter of recognizing, throughout the day, we're going to get triggered by things. We're not going to be the perfect beings that we want to be. And that's what that expectation you were talking about, where I'll find myself like, why am I doing this? Well, oftentimes I just need to let go of why am I doing it. I've done a lot of work to understand why it happens. It becomes, after a period of time, what do I do to return to center? How to cultivate that future. I think it's important to look to purpose and meaning in life, but really, when we look to it, not to focus so much time on, what I'll be doing, when I'll be doing it, how much money I'll be having, like the total content of it, but look contextually at, what's the experience of life I want to experience, create, and generate for others. And, I often work with men who are very successful in many ways by kind of the metrics that we see in society as success, but they've done well for themselves, and feeling lost and displaced and stressed. And we'll often find in that place that they've confused what they're doing for their purpose. My job, this job I'm doing, this company I'm building, is my purpose. And even me as a therapist and a coach, if I make my purpose and the meaning of my life being a therapist or coach, when I'm being a therapist or a coach, and consequently my clients are getting the results that I want them to get, which is another issue, but then I'm living my purpose. And so what that does is when I'm supposed to be at home watching a movie with my kids or playing in the pool with my family or going to the beach, those things will be in conflict with that purpose because I'm not able to do the thing that I think is my purpose and meaning. So we really want to look at, okay, what does being a therapist and a coach mean to me, or for someone else building that company or having this job? And I look at what do I believe it will generate as an experience of life? And for me, it's being a contribution, it's being giving, it's, inspiring, it's connecting, there's other things to it, but I'll just say those things for now. And when I can distill it down to that, now I can be living a purposeful life when I'm being the therapist and coach, and I can be doing those things, being a contribution, being inspiring, being giving and connecting when I'm watching a stupid movie that my son wants to watch, and looking at the things we're doing as a vehicle for our purpose rather than that's what the future is. So I think, and then we'll pass it along, but I think the important thing of cultivating that future is, what do I believe that future thing I want to be doing will provide me, and how can I access that right now? Because the future really isn't later. I hate to be corny, but the future is now. What do I want to bring into my life today? Sitting here with you guys, driving to the store, going to work, kind of the spirituality of the mundane.
Wow. Thank you for that, Ryan. It's really clear that, our idea of what we think success is, it's not necessarily that we have this idea of I'm going somewhere and somewhere I'm going to get there. There's something we're trying to attain right now, and we don't have to wait for that future to have that sense of fulfillment and aliveness and purpose. And the other thing you said at the beginning when you were speaking is that really struck me was it's first awareness and then recovery. And one of the relationship coaches that's a part of our network, she says it's not really about, and actually Warren Earhart says it's not really your reaction, it's how you respond to your reaction. Well, she says it's about how you repair more than anything. And Thatcher, I see you nodding, so actually I'll let you jump in here. The part of this that really that comes back into reaching our potential. What do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I again, what Ryan said was really, really cool. And I like that you said, Nathan, that you started off the question, like, how do we cultivate this? And I think it's important to phrase it like that, at least for me, because that's what I think that's the goal. It's to cultivate and develop, right? And it's not always these things that we want, aren't always just there in a moment, just because I can kind of like access it in my consciousness, right? I have to do some things to build it, right? And along the way, to answer your question, I think being gentle with myself, as corny as that sounds and as bad as I am with that, and realizing, and Ryan kind of spoke into this, like, this really is, for me at least, it's a practice of returning. I'm going to experience the human condition, some type of maybe defect or shortcoming, right? But I think more important that, and you kind of talked about it, Nathan, in terms of the repair, it's like, what am I returning to? Right? I'm going to have these experiences at times. Doesn't mean I need to operate from them, but I might have a certain internal experience. But what am I returning to? Right? And I might have to return over and over and over again, but I think, and this is more of a broader conversation, maybe doesn't answer your question specifically, but I think if anything, for me, that's what spirituality is. It's a practice of returning. Because if I think that I have to get to this ascended, like magical place, the minute that the darkness shows back up, I'm gonna think I'm completely broken again, right? So being gentle with myself and realizing that it is a practice of returning. And also, to answer your question, I think, in terms of steps that you can take to cultivate this kind of thing, I think joining a community of sorts, right? Michael has a whole thing about, finding your tribe and he literally creates that for people. It's such a natural, instinctual, intrinsic thing for man to to, sit around with 30 to 50 other men or join some type of community where we can connect, collaborate, and contribute. And to our early points, right? Like make some sacrifices, right? and give and receive and give thanks and give gratitude, right? And receive those things as well. I think it's in our hardwiring, and that's why certain fellowships and certain communities, like when you walk in initially, it feels like some part of you has just gone home, right? It touches this ancient part of us. And I think that's an important thing. And it's been the thing, I've joined some different communities and fellowships, in the last 15 to 20 years or so. And I can't overstate the impact that it's had on me. A guy like me really needs that kind of stuff. And I think I'm going to make a broad statement. I think it's a healing thing for most people,
Thank you, Thatcher. Wow. You just put so much there. And thank you for putting the community thing in. And Michael, I imagine that there's a lot you want to say between both of them. So I'll just let you take it and run with it.
I'm going to do my best to keep it brief because I love what both Thatcher and Ryan just said. And I'll go back to the beginning of some things that when Ryan was speaking, and I think also, Nathan, to answer your question, I think what's so important in cultivating this is actually distinguishing. And what Ryan was saying, I actually write about in my book, is distinguishing purpose in life from your platform in life. And I think most men, especially in my experience, I've found that most men confuse their platform in life for their purpose in life. And I think Ryan nailed it. What purpose in life is really what's the experience that I desire to generate in myself, in others, and in my community. And then our platform in life is really the vehicle in which we deliver that. And that I have many platforms in life: author, trainer, coach, husband, brother, son, eventually father. Those are all platforms in life, and platforms evolve, grow. Some actually completely finish up. But purpose always stays as that deep, innate desire to generate and cultivate an experience in myself, in my life, in my wife's life, in our family, in our community. So I think distinguishing purpose and platform is very, very key. The other distinction, to answer, I think, more directly your initial question, Nathan, is I think we need to distinguish pleasure from gratification. And there's the two motivating forces in human being is away from pain and toward pleasure. But to really take it to another level of maturity, where I find where men and women are most effective is toward gratification. And gratification, like Thatcher was saying earlier, gratification requires or initiates some sort of sacrifice, that I'm going to forego immediate pleasure of the unsustainable, substance, like Ryan was talking about, the cupcake, the booze, the this or that just allows me to escape because it's pleasurable in that moment. It's effective in that moment, but it's unsustainable. Gratification allows us to look at that deeper commitment, that deeper responsibility, and actually say, okay, I'm willing to forego the immediate pleasure for the long-term sustainable gratification, something that actually enriches my life, enriches my family, enriches my community, that I'm willing to forego and make a sacrifice in this moment as I generate something deeper and more meaningful. And what Thatcher was saying, I think, is really a major remedy and antidote to so much that plagues the masculine culture right now, and the culture in and of itself is, I always say, we're in such a precarious time where we've never been more technologically connected and yet more emotionally isolated. And I think Thatcher nailed it, is the remedy and that medicine and that antidote is connection and community. And I was listening to this interview the other day that I thought was brilliant on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and actually where he got it incorrect. And, because Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, at the bottom is food, shelter, the physical needs, and then the top is self-actualization. Like, so it's very just me. I get to this summit alone. And in between, or in the middle, it's connection, community, love, support. And the author of this conversation, I thought, put it so brilliantly. He said, I've never heard of anyone committing suicide because they were hungry, but I've heard it endlessly of people committing suicide because they were lonely. And I think it really speaks to the human condition that we need each other, that we need that sense of fellowship and brotherhood and belonging and that sense of connection. Because I think without it, our spirit dies far faster than our body. And I think that is a point where both gentlemen were talking about, this spiritual craving that we have. And I think so much of that spiritual craving, yes, is a deep dive inwardly in my own self, but also doing that simultaneous with a group of brothers and sisters that I love and respect.
Wow. Thank you. There's just so much context you created there, Michael. And I guess what I'm really hearing is we need to be together. We need to go together. I'm glad you brought up the suicide thing, because it's not like there's a difference between men and women going through struggle and hardship, but there is a difference in the suicide statistics that men are about 80% of all suicides. And I think that has something to do with that men try and go it alone. There's something about the masculine culture. And you also brought up the culture thing. Thank you for bringing up the culture that these computers and these phones are creating this world where we're more interconnected, but we're more disconnected. And I think there's a lot of changing roles between the technology, between the isolation, and between the shifts between men and women and what's being expected of us and our roles in society in terms of rearing a family, in terms of career, and that kind of brings me to my last question, which we have plenty of time to talk about. And I want to ask each of you, what is possible in the future in terms of bringing all this together, and what's your vision? Like, what's your vision, not just for men, families, the world, but like, what's your vision for ushering in a workability that would really have more people having access to this conversation? And I'm wondering, Ryan, would you like to go first? I'll send you an unmute request.
Hold on. I'm having where is it? Am I unmuted?
I hear you. You're here.
Let me have one of the other guys go quick. I'm having a glitch here. Let me.
We can hear you, bud. We can hear you fine.
I know. Let me try to fix something. If one of you guys can go.
Thatcher, you can go.
Yeah. So I actually, really quick, I want to speak into something that, actually that's already been said in terms of like, when you think about it, Michael, you and I were talking about this when we had the staycation at your place a few weekends ago. And, if you think about addiction, and it doesn't have to be to drugs and alcohol, it can be to, your selfishness, right? It can be to whatever, right? I think on some level, it's really about pain, right? That's why often I think consequences don't really make that much of sometimes they do, and I don't want to make a broad blanket statement, but consequences often don't have a huge impact because you can't treat pain with more pain, right? So more pain's not going to heal, right? What we need is connection and community, right? Because that's what heals. It's the love that's there, right? And I think, you asked to answer your question about, vision, that's it. A more connected community where people know each other. I moved into this apartment kind of complex after living in a house for 10 years. I lived on this street. I swear I did not know one of my neighbors. Actually, it's a lie. I knew one of my neighbors. I knew nobody else on that street. And I moved into this community. It's a condo or apartment complex, I should say. And I've gotten to know probably 20 to 30 people, just residents. And I can't wait to come home most of the time. Like, I absolutely love living here. And it's because, yes, it's got great amenities, I suppose, but it's like, I look forward to seeing my neighbors. I look forward to seeing the people that I live and share space with, right? having this community here has just been such a cool thing, especially considering what's been going on the last, 15 months. So my vision is more of that, having communities that are connected, that are engaged and spending time together, and collaborating and contributing to one another. I really don't know how else to put it, because when I see those things being done in the micro, I see the impact that it has. So if we could, all really just kind of see that, like, man, this is, we're all on one big team here in terms of the United States. Everything's been so polarizing it's been going on for a while, but we could say it's kind of reached a heightened level the last handful of years. If we could just realize that we're really just on the same team, I think that I think that a lot of the pain and a lot of the suffering that human beings experience, I think would reduce. I really do.
Wow. Yeah, one team. Thank you, Thatcher. That's just something to be with. And I think just one team.
Yeah, because I mean, I've been kind of thinking about this community thing in the micro, in terms of, like, that closely available, but if somehow that could get kind of broadened and we could make that bigger, I just think the impact that it would have would just be just crazy. It would be amazing.
Oh, huge. Ryan, are you all situated, or do you want Michael to go?
No, I'm good. Thank you. I would really like to see, what I would like to be able to teach my sons my sons, is the ability to be able to really disagree with each other and not always be on the same page, yet still love each other and those around them. I think I agree with what Thatcher's saying, and I think in the world, same team often gets confused with same viewpoint, same dogma, same track. And that's what makes it seem impossible, because that's not really what it is. I don't think we're going to ever get everybody to be seeing things the same way, nor do I think we should. We will never invent anything. We would never get better. I mean, I don't even want, when I'm stressed or in duress in my relationship, I want to, when I say I just want my wife on the same team with me, most of the time I'm saying I just want her to agree with me and do what I say, and that's not really what I want. I want a partner who's able and willing to challenge me, and we can grow from it. And, I think that's where it becomes more possible to do what Thatcher said, that it doesn't mean that we all vote for the same person or like the same thing or have the same taste. It means we have all of those differences, and in the differences, we're able to communicate and grow with each other. I mean, I guess that's a big ask still. But I think it is possible, and I think it does start on the micro, though. It starts with us affecting change with each other here, then with our families. It doesn't, if we wait until, government or corporation or religion does it up here, it's too big. The grass grows from the roots. And so, I think I'll start with me. I hope to continue to grow into a man who welcomes diversity. I mean, I want to welcome diversity too, but I meant to say welcomes adversity. Doesn't mean I like it either. It means I'm willing and able to face it and not go into this, I gotta go to work today, or I gotta deal with this thing today, or I gotta make this call today. Because that's kind of my preset functions, my default settings that I'll fall back to. And I need to recognize that. And, when I can recognize that, and, I can impact my wife and my kids and then my friends and my community, and they can do the same. I think that's how we get along better. Brotherly love doesn't mean, we want to hug each other all the time. I think it really means that when we're really pissed at each other, we don't have to hurt each other.
Wow. It's like being able to be with any communication and just be like, you know what? I love you more than what I think about what you're saying, but I'm willing to get what you're saying because, and I don't agree with it, but I want to hear it. And sometimes we don't even hear it and we have to go separate ways. And then there's that repair element that we talked about earlier, which is like, okay, am I going to be a bigger person and repair this relationship and just set aside that there's these differences? And I think you are highlighting something that's really needed, Ryan, because all of that division, it really just stems from that need to be right that I think we're all very familiar with here. So, Michael, we still have a pretty good chunk of time. We have 9 minutes to wrap this up. But Michael, how would you like to wrap this up with your vision in the future and also building on what Thatcher and Ryan created as well?
Well, I think my vision is a blend or mixture of what Thatcher and Ryan just said. I think that everything Ryan was just saying is really pointing to us what's needed culturally as a world phenomena. What it needs from us or requires from us is maturity and the ability to be mature enough to listen and communicate effectively. And I mean, there's 7.5 billion worldviews. There's 7.5 billion filters. There's 7.5 billion personal paradigms in the way people filter the life and the world and each other. We're never going to agree on it all. There's no way. We all have unique, different filters, but a level of maturity, and I think also a level of mature masculinity, is the ability to say, okay, this is your worldview. This is what my worldview. This is where they come together, and this is where they're in friction. And I don't need to hurt you, harm you, or kill you over it. And I think that's an element culturally as human beings that we're stepping up to in my vision and in my hope, that we're abandoning some of this immaturity of since you don't see the world the way I see it, I'm going to throw a temper tantrum over it, rather than no, hey, listen, this is how you see it. This is how I see it. And a level of maturity and what I would call integration and harmony is, all right, great. Now that we have cleared that, how do we now cooperate and coexist? How do we now share this planet together and this country together and countries together and live in a place of interconnectedness and harmony? And I think bringing it into the masculinity conversation, I think there's this term going around, toxic masculinity. Masculinity is not toxic. Toxic masculinity is just immaturity or a misuse of power. So I think we need to start to redefine that and call it what it is, because masculinity in and of itself is incredibly powerful. It's honorable. It's an integrity. It wants to protect. It wants to provide. Masculinity is disciplined and structured and committed and responsible. And I think as we start to really elevate that maturity, what I then feel is possible in my vision is harmony. That we can live and coexist and cohabitate this earth, this planet, without killing it, without fighting for it. We can actually share within it. And that, I think, is a whole different departure from what we've learned or what we've been taught. And I think, what Ryan was pointing to is another distinction that I make often in my circles and in my work with tribes and with brotherhood, is I think so many of us have been taught how to fit in. And to fit in means I'll change who I am to get your approval. I'll rearrange who I am so that you love me or show me affection. And I think where the level of maturity comes in is actually a sense of belonging, that I actually get to discover on my own, what is my authenticity? What are my gifts and skills and skill sets and talents and medicine and contributions that I can give and contribute? And then enter a community with that as a sense of belonging. And a sense of belonging actually highlights all of our authenticity. It highlights our uniqueness, our differences, and celebrates them. And rather than just fit in and which tribe, which camp am I in, and which political camp, and which thought system and worldview and paradigm do I fit in, and how do we make everyone else wrong because of it? I think a sense of belonging in an element or a rise of maturity in us can actually express our differences, see our differences, and actually honor them. Just like Ryan was saying, if I'm in my unconscious programming, I don't want my wife to be like, yeah, you're right, keep going. I want her to jar me out of it with a new, fresh perspective. And I think culturally, we're coming to a point where we must figure this out. We must figure out how we coexist. We must figure out how we cooperate. We must figure out how we love each other and give a blueprint to love each other. Men, women, everything in between, country to country, family to family, community to community. And I think that's going to come with an element of maturity. And I also think that's going to come with an element of integration of masculinity and femininity and head and heart, and living from a harmonized place and an integrated place as individuals, and then as families, and then as communities, and then as cultures. And I think as we do that work on our own and we harmonize ourselves, our head and our heart, I think that creates an effect and an impact that's going to continue to spread. And I think it's with vehicles like this and platforms like this and gentlemen like you all that it's going to continue to spread, because there's going to come a point where we must realize we must figure out how to coexist and cooperate with each other, and not lose our sense of individuality in the process, but actually strengthen our sense of individuality and belonging. And there's a balance between the two, and there's a harmony between the two. And that's my vision, and I'm excited to see it continue to move forward, whether I'm here or it's for my children or their children.
Thank you, Michael. There was a lot said right there. And I like what you said about defining, like, I think a lot of people have the definition of being a man in the toxic sense, but being a man, masculinity has nothing to do with that. There's just a aberrated power. And I guess what we're here doing is we're spreading the message of real masculinity, the masculinity that loves, that blueprint for love you were talking about. Oh, Michael, that's so needed. And that fits in with everything Ryan and Thatcher were saying, that when you have community, it's that opportunity to express that love that Thatcher was speaking to. And, you know, there's so much abundance of, and with what Ryan was saying in terms of just being able to agree to disagree, you know, loving each other isn't always like the warm, happy feeling. Sometimes love is respect and saying, you know what, I don't have to see eye to eye with you to know that you're my brother, you're my sister. And you know what, I want the best for you. And if we're going to have to respectfully disagree, that's all good. So we're at the end of our time here. And I also want to say, you know, we have some really positive comments on Facebook. And I want to say that this conversation isn't as established in the world as it should be. And I know that because in terms of putting out this messaging for hope, 80% of the statistics on our Facebook page were women. And I said to Eli, I said, wow, there's some work to do with men, that this message isn't yet getting the traction. But I know that what each and every one of you spoke to today is that the core issue of what it means to have healthy expression for men and for all people. So what I want to invite now is anyone who's watching on Facebook, I'll post it on Facebook now as well. You can join the Zoom line with these gentlemen. I'm going to stay here to introduce the family panel, but you can go with these gentlemen and Eli. And I want to thank each of you for being here. It's really been an honor, and I appreciate what you created here today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nathan.
Pleasure. The links over here in the chat. So if you guys just want to jump lines, Eli will be there waiting for you.
Wonderful.
Thank you
Thank
so